before the Prime Minister could address. So Sitharaman started as the industry minister, 5-7 minutes, and then 10 CEOs, including our managing director, Mr. Ayukawa, was supposed to speak, 5 minutes each, 7 minutes each. So Mr. Ambani and ITC and everything, Tata Motors, and that process was over, and then Mr. Modi spoke for about 55 minutes. Make in India launched that line, logo and everything. And in that 55 minutes, he was talking of this concept of huge investment into India, the kind of attractive kind of destination it should be. And then he was talking of a 10-year blueprint. And it was pin drop silence. People were very attentive to what he was saying. In that 55-minute speech, he took the name of one company at that point of time. Just one company, one example. And that company was Maruti Suzuki. The product was Maruti 800, is what the Prime Minister spoke of when we talk of this Make in India concept. Somewhere perhaps we are looking at this motivation to keep on excelling into competitiveness through manufacturing excellence as far as Maruti is concerned. When I look at this concept in my own thinking, in my own experience last 40 years, it can happen roughly about 3 or 4 variables, and one variable which is very critical, which we all learn from Japan, in our case from Suzuki Motors, Japan, their experience, is the approach of bottoms up, is involving all the people, lowest level person to the highest level person, into this understanding, this evolution, this cause. That approach will be the first essential prerequisite in my thinking to reach manufacturing excellence, what Make in India deserves. Somewhere maybe therefore I think Japanese manufacturing companies can be a big learning for India. Second perspective, very quickly, I look at this basic culture of improvement as the base. If that is the work culture, that is the DNA, that brings in a kind of a joint effort, in our case 30,000 people or 32,000 people, where manufacturing excellence can be achieved by involving all and creating this very congenial DNA or the culture of the company itself, where the culture says improvement, improvement, improvement. We are looking at Maruti, and I think I am associated with Maruti 2003 onwards, last 16 years. We have been investing into changing, updating the work culture of our company, because there cannot be a situation that what was good, fit, working in 2003, 2004, 2005 will be valid to work in 2019, 2021. Absolutely not possible. To a great extent, also with the changing demography of the workforce, which my colleague Rajesh was talking about, is a huge impact to look for this change continuously again and again. What work culture will work for a company going forward? Maybe when we are looking at the dynamic business environment, perhaps it is bringing in a compelling force to redefine the work culture, the DNA, the kind of values with which we work. And therefore, maybe it is one of the critical responsibility of the top leadership in my thinking in any company where they create the right kind of work culture. One caution here perhaps I would like to share out of my experience. Many companies talk about a kind of a work culture which when the people are being recruited, they're coming into the company first time, they say this is the way our work culture is. So I call it the stated work culture. But when the new employees join that company and when they actually experience something else, which becomes the actual work culture, the bigger the difference between the stated work culture and the actual work culture, bigger the problems will be on manufacturing excellence, bigger the problems will be on employee relations. Maybe when we look at the third factor, and Rajesh talked about that big way, I fully endorse what he's saying, what impact it will take going forward. This digital transformation, the next wave, is going to rattle up past concepts, approaches, and understandings on business and on people. When we are looking at artificial intelligence, machine learning, maybe robotics, you can imagine what impact it is going to have in our own life, forget about manufacturing. When we look at products and services, it will be changing 360 degrees over the next 10-15 years. Maybe preparing the employee population. They should be ready to face this big, huge transformation Most companies do not bother about preparing the employee population. They go ahead preparing and using the technology fastest to get the best optimum outputs. But I think, in my thinking, preparing the organization, preparing the employee population, and bringing in required new processes so that it works congenial to our objectives will be critical. Perhaps to a great extent, this will require a capability which is very difficult, and I call it selectively deleting the past. Because unless we forget the past, you cannot bring in new changes, new things into our working, into our mindset. That is going to be a huge challenge. Maybe to a great extent at Maruti, we firmly believe, last 7 years, that selectively deleting the past is one way to go forward. And you get into imbibing new things, new perspectives. Last but not the least, I think people capability, people skills, people motivation and commitment, as Mr. Bhargav keeps on guiding us all the time. These two critical variables are going to define manufacturing excellence and success, make in India, maybe industry at the rate 4.0. What exactly is the difference where we look at, maybe in our case, roughly about 225 supplier companies, 2015 onwards, I've been working with them, with our supply chain team, with Mr. Ayukawa, that whether they also understand the same functional maturity, criticality of HR, IR management. And somewhere, last 4.5 years, this experience is showing a big deficit, vacuum on this element of somewhere people are capable, no commitment, no motivation. Somewhere reverse, people have zero motivation, zero commitment, but they have the capability. But a combination of both is very critical. In this sense, perhaps when we are looking at use of temporary workers and contract workers, somewhere there is a use or very professional kind of intervention, but mostly it is misuse and leading to a lot of manufacturing disruption and lot of industrial relations disruption, which is quietly happening, and we are just witnessing this without being able to react. In my thinking, perhaps when we look at this perspective, building people capability and skill is a critical thing. Maybe bringing in a positive attitude, ownership and engagement. And somewhere, Rajesh and I were discussing this morning, that perhaps in the basic training itself, there can be a lot of positive industrial relations perspective built in. Maybe to a great extent, participation, engagement to bring in motivation. Maybe creating a shared goal in 35,000 people in Maruti, that they all can grow to great careers in Maruti, whether they are workmen, whether they are supervisors, whether they are young engineers. Shared goal. Maybe looking at this principle of inclusiveness, somewhere coexistence of multi-generations. In Maruti's case, I think roughly we are working with 5 generations today, people above 55 and people below 25. And believe me, all 5 generations have different aspirations for life, for career, from Maruti, from top management, from top leadership, all different. Senior age people have been talking to me about post-retirement benefits. Younger people are talking about what? Will they be interested in post-retirement benefits? No. They are interested in cash, weekly bonus instead of yearly bonus. You know, huge difference in the aspirations. How you can manage them with one-size-fit-all kind of an approach? Not possible. Somewhere, maybe we will look at a great family connect as one of the way forwards. And to a great extent, Mr. Bhargav, Mr. O. Suzuki keeps on referring people in Maruti as the biggest strength, biggest differentiator for our success to remain number one for the last 37 years in the Indian auto industry. When we are looking at maybe our own example, what we have done in the last 10 years, setting up of the Maruti Suzuki Training Academy in 2010 to bring in more center of excellence concept for what we do on skills and capability building, all across levels. We look at also the concept of a web studio in our Gurgaon plant. We can connect with the rest of the India, 20, 30, 40,000 people at the same go. We are looking at production lines within that school where you can be trained before you actually go to the shop floor. You can have a real shop floor in the training academy itself. We look at Japan India Institute of Manufacturing Institute, which this initiative with the Gujarat government at Mehsana, Gujarat, recently started at Gurgaon, and we are thinking of third one somewhere in Uttar Pradesh. And we are looking at another high skill finishing school for people with engineering programs or ITI qualifications to look at IACE, which is again at Ahmedabad. Somewhere we are looking at it not for our own internal use, we are looking at it for the country, for Make in India perspective towards manufacturing excellence. Now, challenges which I see in terms of this theme today, manufacturing excellence, industry at the rate 4.0, achieving global quality levels I have been hearing for the past 15, 20 years, but I am still not convinced that we have made sufficient progress towards achieving global quality levels. Big gap. This is one subject which Ayukawa-san has been driving in Maruti for the last more than 4 years. Personal agenda, driving Maruti to achieve global quality levels. For reason that our Baleno made in Manesar, Haryana is now being sold in Japan is one example of achieving that kind of global quality level. And believe me, that kind of initiative was again done by the Honorable Prime Minister, Mr. Modi, and Prime Minister of Japan, Abe-san, when the first batch of Balenos were delivered into Tokyo 2016. Somewhere we look at bigger issue is of perceptions that quality means high cost. That's a belief, it's not a fact. We are looking at maybe in Maruti, one very common thing of quality failures, that shop floor defined systems and processes are not being adhered to, whether in Maruti or whether in suppliers. Simple process of adhering to defined systems and processes, no, I will deviate. So I will create quality issues, something like that, as simple as that. Maybe when we look at volume preference, then we forget about quality. Big problem in our industry, in India. And we are looking at this low-skilled manpower, we are looking at contract, outsource, again creating hugely to quality being down all the time. Maybe I think work culture, that kind of DNA, and maybe this mindset is where the bigger challenge is than product and technology and the working processes. But this is one challenge. Second, on people, there is a very interesting perspective which Rajesh talked. I am just enlarging that perspective. 3 changes will happen when we go forward, and especially the young students who are sitting here can look at this. One is that the change of nature of work itself, as Rajesh was talking, will undergo a huge change. Maybe business environment, currently what we are facing, auto industry going down last 9 months, that can have an impact. VUCA business environment, volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. We are looking at this digital wave, transformation, huge impact. We are looking at disruptions, maybe regulations, globalization. That could be one perspective, which will change the nature of work itself. Second is that the change of workplace. Historically, what used to be the workplace is going a huge change. Maybe open offices, maybe virtual offices, maybe working from home, maybe to a great extent, great diversity on the workplace. So the nature of workplace is undergoing a huge change. Mr. Bhargav was telling me one very interesting story that earlier Maruti, being a public sector company, had big cabins for senior officers. But at one point of time, I think 1985 or somewhere, we decided, I think Mr. Bhargav and the Japanese top management, that we should get into open offices. So he was asking me that, Mr. Siddiqui, do you think maximum resistance came from which people? I told him that from the senior most people. He said, yes, they did not want to come out of the cabins to sit in the open halls. Today, Maruti is the fact that we just sit in the open hall with all our people. There is a cabin for Mr. Bhargav as chairman, and there is a cabin for Mr. Ayukawa as MD. Matter ends. Rest, all of us sit on a 4x4 table in a big hall with all our people around us. So that kind of change of workplace, maybe virtual offices, technology-led impact, that will be the second factor. And change in workforce when we are looking at coexistence of multiple generations working, multiple different various aspirations, but still they have to work for one company, one cause, one common objective. That kind maybe have impact on the future HR strategy of any corporate, rather than just following blindly what we have been doing last 10 years. What we have been doing last 10 years may not be any guarantee that it will work in HR over the next 10 years. Employee relations, another challenge. And in the morning, I think we were having this discussion, some of us, and we all felt Dr. Santosh Bhave, he will be part of the panel, Vijay Nair, my best friend from Mahindra, we were all talking. And we think that next 25 years, employee relations challenge is going to be a reality whether you like it or you don't like it. Maybe to a great extent causes, because we give low priority on this HR and IR function into our working. We give more attention to shop floor, we give more attention to production, quality, marketing, sales, something like that. Low people connect, low priority on HR and IR. Recipe for disaster, in my thinking. Maybe lack of capable people at the shop floor who are responsible for first point of supervision, contact. We think in Maruti that is a critical resource for us. And maybe looking at this very high aspirations of younger millennials coming into the shop floor play, blue collar millennials, what we call, very different than the older generation of workers which we have been experienced. Maybe the rural and urban divide, workers coming from rural India, managers coming from urban India will continue to be a puzzle. And the contract system, as I said, use or misuse, largely misuse and exploitation. So maybe in my thinking, I have been talking about it last 10 years, HR and IR in my thinking is a business function. If it is not a business function, it should not be their part of the organization structure. If it is their part of the organization structure, it should be most critical business function to be reviewed at the board level, as simple as that. Maybe, as I have been talking about it in all the conferences, whether CII, NHRDN, or our previous 6 editions of Awanish Dev Memorial Lecture, 3 models of IR I have seen in India last 40 years, very closely, very clearly. First one is ignorance, where there are corporates who do not even understand the impact of a showstopper like HR and IR. They somehow just carry. The second model is more common, is a compromise model. Are bhai Maruti ko supply karna hai order. Somehow compromise with the unions, compromise with IR, do whatever, give them some toffee somewhere, some incentive, manage the production operations. Poor, very poor thinking, compromise model. And third is engagement model, rarest of rare in India, where perhaps to a great extent I call it the real HR of IR, and somewhere very much related to Japan, big learning from Japan, engagement model. Last issue, IR issue in Japan was 1958. That is the maturity of the engagement model. First one, some companies I observe, ignorance model. Second one, mostly I observe, they are hell-bent on compromising, very poor way of management. And third is engagement model, maybe what we are doing at Maruti, big way with the best of our efforts. When I look at Japan, the maturity of this model, engagement model, to a great extent, is looking at the management philosophy intent of being fair and inclusive on part of the company. On part of the union, well-being and progress of the company is first priority. Then rest of the benefits in this thing of workers will be discussed. I have seen it personally, experienced it personally, and I think we have Deoka-san with us here. He must be really having that kind of experience from Suzuki. Perhaps we can off time discuss with him. We are looking at maybe decisions on salary, benefits, bonus, all depending on company performance, very simple. We are looking at working conditions, employee participation, discipline and productivity, non-issues in Japan. They are automatically there in the system, part of the DNA. When we look at this last perspective, big challenge of leadership, and I think somewhere we are facing this 9 months of low, very low economic kind of growth or rather slowdown, maybe crisis, maybe in case of impact on auto industry, minus 20% last roughly about 8-9 months. That means what should be 3 lakhs per month kind of a consumption of cars in India is going below 2 lakhs per month currently. That's the huge shift which is happening. So I am saying managing growth in ambiguity, maybe bringing in business strategy with innovation, maybe looking at multi-generation workforce aspirations, leadership, ethics and governance. And in my own thinking, I would like to talk to you about our understanding. We decode it into 3 quotients in top leaders: vision quotient, business quotient and emotional quotient. Largely the deficiency is vision and emotional quotient. Most of us are very good in business quotient. That gap is likely to be a crisis going forward when we look at the kind of challenges which are there. When we are also looking at this big learning from Dr. Vijay Govindrajan, he has been working with the Maruti Suppliers Club for long, and Vijay talks it very simply that a good top leader must be capable of 3 perspectives. One is simply managing the present, capability to simply manage the present without complicating things. That is the first box. Second box, he talks about selectively deleting the past. I talked about earlier also. In our case, bad habits that we don't want to delete the past. We want to live in the past and we want to hang on to the past most of the time. हम लोग के यहाँ पे क्या आदत है कि अगर बाज़ार में पॉलीथीन भी कुछ लेके आते हैं सामान लेके, वो पॉलीथीन भी घर में संभाल के रख लेते हैं, बच्चों के शादी दहेज में काम आएगा. How do we delete the past? Big problem. But I think this is going to be a big challenge for leadership moving forward. Creating the future, envisioning the future into the present, before it becomes obvious to others, we should be able to lead it, see it, and create a kind of a path or kind of direction, blueprint. Perhaps when we are looking at Maruti 2030, we are looking at 5 million, 50 lakh cars to be sold, made and sold, and we are looking at maybe 3 different destinations of production centers into the country, and we are looking at maybe a kind of a focus strategy, 3 or 4 key strategies to reach there 2030. 2 million 2020 and then 5 million 2030 is somewhere creating the future before it becomes obvious to the others. One last perspective, perhaps what Vijay talks about most of the time, you must be able to have a 360-degree perspective, past, present and future, if you want to be a top leader. You cannot be only a top leader by defining future. You cannot be a good leader only talking about past. And you cannot be a good leader if you are only knowing about present, neither able to relate to past nor able to relate to future. That perspective has been a huge learning, and perhaps we look at that one. Last but not the least, we have been taught and trained last 30, 40 years that you should be the first, you should be the pioneering, you should start every initiative. But recently in our dealers conference at Macau, we had one great speaker from US, an Indian gentleman settled there, done great work on maybe the VUCA business environment, strategies to overcome this ambiguity, complexity. And he talked about being first or being the best may not assure success in future. Possibly being the second or a rapid follower may lead to success in future. Changes, transformations, disruptions, something which worked in the past may not work in the future is the perspective we are looking at. I sincerely would like to thank all my HR counterparts who have been very kind, starting from my great friend, mentor, Mr. P. Dwarkanath, Mr. Suresh Tripathi, again great friend from Delhi NCR, now ran away to Tata Steel, so we still keep track of him. And great from Mahindra, 2 great people, Dr. Prince Augustine and Vijay Nair, very, very great kind of understanding, great support. Admiration for both of them. We have Dr. Santosh Bhave, he has been very kind yesterday evening and today being with us from Bharat Forge. We have Mr. Anand Kot, the president of the NHRD and Pune chapter. And we have Anjali, I think I can see her now, long years. Great to be having you here again. Thank you very much. And I really thank all of you to joining us for Awanish, a great tribute for him, part of this memorial lecture. Thanks a lot and my best wishes.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot. And now I'll request Mr. P. Dwarkanath, Non-Executive Chairman, JSK, and also trustee in the Awanish Dev Memorial Trust, to come and deliver his keynote address, sir.
Mrs. Suparnaji, fellow professionals, Sakleen Bhai, Suresh and others, and dear friends, good morning to everybody. I think my job has become much easier in the keynote address. My dear friend Sakleen has very exhaustively covered the whole theme of the session and what the future looks like. So I try to give a little bit slant to it, and before that, Mr. Rajesh Uppal also talked about it. Firstly, I have to say I need to thank the trust as well as Maruti for making me a trustee. I take this responsibility with great humility and honor along with my friend Suresh, and we have also accepted it with a purpose. I think the purpose have been spelled out. I don't want to labor on it, keep saying it. But I just want to give a couple of messages here. Firstly, I would like to commend the energy levels of Suparnaji. I think I have been seeing her for last 7 years, and the way she has got over the crisis and been the part of it in trying to pay the tribute or homage to Mr. Awanish Kumar Dev is something commendable. Here I want to, that's why I said I want to talk a little bit differently. It may be off the track, but it's quite relevant, especially for younger generation. I think the amount of support Maruti has done it to make the purpose, it is not just saying tribute or gratitude to Awanish Kumar ji, but also to the future fraternity, HR profession, which we are all part of it. We are very proud of it. But the way they have done it, when I said HR fraternity, it doesn't mean who are qualified or who possess the job titles, but who are related to people, which most of us. So in that context, the amount of sustainability, you can start an initiative, but in most of India, it fizzles out after some time. Memories fades away. Time is a healing factor. Time will forget. But something which I've been seeing right from the word go, the way it's sustained or improved and putting scholarships, inviting more audience, doing these memorial lectures, which I don't want to repeat at different corners of India. I think we are spreading the message. When we are spreading the message, we are not parochial in the sense that we are confining to one region or Manesar or North India, but all over pan-India, even according spreading to the global levels, because most of the global companies are here. And I think it's a great example which we need to do it. It's unfortunate such incidents happens. There are crises for the family as well as for the organization, for the community. I think the way they involved, you see, some of the crises you can anticipate, some of them you cannot anticipate. This is one of those things which happen. But how do you cope up and move? The personal resilience is demonstrated as tremendous, because I want to focus on this process, because after a couple of years, we tend to forget this. This is more important. The first thing Sakleen, who was holding it at that time, did was involvement of the entire HR fraternity. I think it's not that they are not capable of taking it. They have got a great battery of experts and their own team. They can understand better. But I think what message I want to give outside in perspective. Outside in perspective is very important. It's sometimes when you're doing inside, you may think whatever you're doing is right, but it may not be right. There are better practices maybe outside. There are not good practices which you may try to imbibe from it and try to eliminate those things. So these are the aspects, which makes you feel, oh, this organization is something. It's an institution. It is not just a company for profits or profitability, but it's an institution. That's where the institution building has come in, because my association with Maruti has been for about 15 years since my friend Sakleen has joined. I think one of the things which he touched upon, I just want to give a different focus and say it I'm a GSK guy. I have not changed my name. I have not changed my profession. My association with GlaxoSmithKline is 40 years, but company's name has changed 4 times. You see, that is what the globally, because why it's changed? Because of mergers and acquisitions. This is not in your control. There are certain things which you control, certain things are not in your control. The things which is not in your control, which you did not anticipate, that's where you have to show that sort of resilience to come over it and cope up it. This is a classic case of Maruti, if you see it. What they have done in last 10 years or 15 years is something amazing, which is on record. But how could they do it? That is more important. What they have done is one aspect. How could they do it? This is a joint venture government-Japanese collaboration company. It's become a virtually privatized with Japanese way of doing it with the Indian CMD. And the way when Sakleen and others have brought in, this is